Is standing by with the latest. A very cold afternoon I can see there. Francis, good afternoon to you. Do take us through some of the panel discussions that have been deliberated today. And of course, this notion around Team South Africa, rallying behind this notion that South Africa is very much open for investment in business.
Yeah, well, Team South Africa, the Deputy President and some of the ministers have just held a press conference not too long ago. And it's a small room, a small gathering, but this is very important because remember that journalists from around the world are here in Davos and there's so much information coming out. And there is interest in South Africa as this hot emerging market for the year, as Goldman Sachs said, and all the business delegates, without fail, have said to us that the presence of the Deputy President here is really opening doors for them, that they are getting meetings very easily and that there's a glow around the South African presence. We did speak to the Deputy President and we'll bring you more later as he jets off before US President Donald Trump addresses the delegates tomorrow. And I can tell you that it's not an official boycott, but many of them will not be here. But let's now speak to our Reserve Bank Governor, Lesetja Kganyago. Thank you for being with us, Governor. And you have said that it's very easy to meet the people you want to meet at the moment.
Oh, definitely better than last year. Last year we had to go around asking people, please stay invested in South Africa, believe in us. And we got into Davos this year with a renewed optimism. There was the spirits amongst the South African delegates were very high, and we struggled to fit everyone into our programs because there is just so much interest about the country.
And are these meetings that can yield tangible benefits for the country?
Without a doubt. What we have had is that in the previous year, people were also playing a wait-and-see attitude. People needed to be convinced to invest in South Africa. But this time around, people have got this renewed interest. It's like they do not want to meet this South African investment train. But there are very important indicators that we had seen. We had seen foreigners have returned into our domestic stock market, and you saw our domestic stock market rally. We have seen the cost of government borrowing decline as a result of the renewed optimism about South Africa. We have seen the cost of insuring South African government debt, what is called credit default swaps. We have seen that also decline, and we have also seen a recovery of the currency to levels that had not been seen in the past 2 years. So this optimism gets itself reflected in key financial markets indicators as well.
I was going to ask you about the currency. Have you been smiling when you look at the rand? And is it because of the positive news coming out of South Africa, or because the dollar has hit these incredible 3-year lows, I think?
All of the above plus one more. Yes, there is the issue that the dollar has weakened, but there is also the issue that commodity prices are stronger, and South Africa is a commodity producing country, and many currencies of commodity exporting countries have also appreciated, but the South African rand had appreciated faster than those currencies, which is testimony to what we had been saying last year, that the weakness of the rand was reflecting South African idiosyncrasies. And with us having certainty about the political leadership of the country, and with a very clear policy trajectory that the Deputy President had been putting across investors here in Davos, that positive mood is still there. And lastly is that there is also a renewed interest in emerging markets by investors from the developed world. So funds are starting to flow once again to the developing markets, which is why the South African rand also benefited.
And very quickly, because I want to talk about your job at the IMF, but if this train keeps going, if the confidence in Cyril Ramaphosa remains, is this good for all the things that you care about? Inflation, what does it mean for our interest rates? Does it mean that we could avoid another rating downgrade, or are those things still all lingering?
Well, I have listened to the Deputy President speak many times, and he kept on emphasizing that this thing is about the credit story. The enthusiasm about the country, much as he is leading Team South Africa here, the enthusiasm is more about South Africa, the story. It's more about the South African credit. How has this thing helped in the things that I have to be doing as the central bank governor? For a long time, we had highlighted that the rand remains a risk to the inflation outlook. And in the November monetary policy statement, we did highlight the fact that there are uncertainties on the politics, there's uncertainty about what the policy trajectory is going to be, and that those continue to weigh negatively on the rand. Now that we know who the leadership is, now that we know what the policies are, the market are absorbing that and taking them in stride, and that helps to underpin what we had seen in the markets. Obviously, the appreciation of the rand is good for inflation, but there is the other aspect. The other aspect is that the oil price had gone up, and what the appreciation of the rand has done was to cushion South Africans against the rise in the oil price. And as all the indicators show, that we will be seeing a decline in the pump price of fuel.
Okay, that is good news for South Africans, and it was good news for all of us that you were given this new job at the IMF. Just explain for us simply what it means to be at the helm of this advisory committee, apparently one of the top 3 officials on the IMF overall contingent.
Importantly, I am not leaving the country. I will continue to be the governor of the South African Reserve Bank. This is a non-executive position. It is a committee called the International Monetary and Financial Committee of the IMF. It is at the top providing policy advice to the IMF. It constitutes ministers and governors from all the countries that are members of the IMF. The governors that are at the table as ministers and governors are all called governors in the IMF, who are at the table represent about 189 countries. It's a very important job. It's the first time that Sub-Saharan Africa gets the privilege of leading this important committee, and it comes at a fairly crucial time in the global economy, but also more importantly for the international monetary and financial system.
So good for Africa, good for South Africa. What sort of personal stamp would you like to leave at the end of your tenure? I think it's several years.
You know, in the global fora, you need the whole world to be with you. It's not about just personal fulfillment. I will count on the support from the members of the committee, and more importantly, the members of the broader membership of the International Monetary Fund. I am also cognizant of the fact that I carry the hopes of many Africans, that many Africans are looking up to me, and they're saying that, okay, you are one of our own, you know the challenges that we face as a continent, how are you going to help us? And it is something that one would have to navigate with the rest of the membership of the International Monetary Fund.
Okay, so very good luck with that. My final question: you vehemently defended the independence of the Reserve Bank, and Cyril Ramaphosa last night, I was at a dinner, he was praising you. It looks like the relationship is very good, but the ANC may be infringing or wanting to infringe on that independence. Is there a collision? Are you on a collision course with the ruling party?
If you read the ANC resolution, you will realize that the ANC said that the independence and the mandate of the Reserve Bank should be protected. That is what we're looking for. The independence and the mandate of the Reserve Bank should be protected. And it should not just be the ANC that protects the independence and mandate of the Reserve Bank. It should not just be the Deputy President who does it. I know that President Zuma also came out to protect the mandate and independence of the Reserve Bank. The Speaker of Parliament in court papers came out to protect the independence and mandate of the Reserve Bank, as she correctly should do. And actually, all South Africans should stand up and say that the South African Reserve Bank is an important institution of our democracy. And this important institution of our democracy have been tasked through the Constitution to protect the value of the currency in the interest of balanced and sustainable growth. And that is what the Reserve Bank is supposed to do. That is its constitutional imperative, and all South Africans should actually be rallying behind this and say, this is the institution of our democracy. Give it the space to do the task that we have assigned it to.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Reserve Bank Governor Lesitshe Kganyago, part of Team SA here in Davos in Switzerland. You can hear the helicopters overhead, probably because US President Donald Trump is reportedly in town. We haven't seen him, we haven't seen the protesters, but some anticipation, some loathing, and a lot of the African delegates at least leaving today. That's a wrap for now.
And of course, Francis, before I let you go, just to keep to that momentum of positive news, we've seen the Rand rally around, of course, the new cleanup reforms by the ruling party. To tell you this, about 40 minutes ago, the Rand was sitting at 11 Rand 90 to the dollar. I mean, and of course, I've just heard the Reserve Bank governor also alluding to this positive sentiment on the floor by the investors. What are investors saying with this delegation that is currently marketing South Africa to the world in Davos?
Well, investors were positive before Davos. I haven't spoken to any of the global investors because I can tell you that on the floor in the Congress Center, people crisscross each other. It's madly busy. But the business delegates here, we've spoken to the CEOs, the joint CEOs of Sasol. I've spoken to the Barclays CEO and her Maria Ramos's deputy, Peter McClary. They say that this is as good as it gets. And they say that those investors are clamoring to speak to them, and that the meetings that they've been wanting to hold for years and years are suddenly opening up to them. The doors are opening and they're meeting the right people. So, and I must tell you that not one of the business leaders that I've spoken to, and there have been several others, have diverged from that. They are all saying that this year is different and there's an incredible glow and positivity, and Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa's presence here is opening those doors, Alicia.
All right, and of course, with that in mind, with those positive reforms, Francis, what are some of those more tangible results that we can actually expect from these meetings that will be undertaken by Team South Africa while in Davos?
Well, one of the benefits is that they get to talk to global journalists. So maybe it's just changing perceptions about South Africa that we need to worry about. For instance, an interview with the Washington Post changes perceptions, perhaps, among the U.S. intelligentsia, and that's important. Another thing is that access to other heads of state. Cyril Ramaphosa telling me that he's met several of them, the Rwandan president, the Zimbabwean president, and several other heads of state. And African trade and regional integration is so important because that will actually lift all boats. He was saying if the Zimbabwean economy is strong, we will be strong. So hopefully they can come up with tangible ways to increase that activity. So we're not trading with Europe, we're trading more with our fellow Africans. And lastly, I guess we're already seeing some tangible benefits because there's been changes at Eskom, and Cyril Ramaphosa told delegates last night at a dinner not far from here that you know, they were coming to Davos, and one of the business leaders said, why should we even bother when Eskom is in a state of absolute crisis? And he said that led to a decision to make changes even this week while the delegation was here in Davos. But again, that's proving that at least maybe this time, because remember, we've been saying that South Africa is open for business for years, maybe this time there will be real action, real walking of the talk.
Thank you so much to our reporter there stationed out in Davos in Switzerland. That is our economics reporter, Francis Hurd. She was joined by Reserve Bank Governor earlier on, Lesitshe Kganyago, who also seems to be praising Team South Africa's delegation for their constant lobbying. That, of course, the country is open for business. We'll definitely keep you informed as to the deliberations and developments from Davos.